You know that feeling. You've been wronged. You tell a friend, and they get it. They say, "That's terrible. You have every right to be angry." And in that moment, something in you unknots. Validation is like oxygen when you're emotionally suffocating. But then a strange thing happens. The next day, and the day after, the story of the harm is still the main event. It feels good to be right, to have your pain seen, but you also feel stuck. This is one of the most subtle traps in life. The story that gets you validation can quietly become the cage that limits your future. The relief of being seen as a victim can harden into an identity that steals your power to act. So here is the idea we're exploring today. A principle that separates people who get stuck from people who move through hardship. It's this: acknowledge the harm and then reclaim choice. It is not one or the other. You don't have to pretend it didn't hurt to be powerful, and you don't have to stay powerless to honor your pain. This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about recognizing that your life story has two parts: what happened to you and what you do next. Why does this matter? Because options are the currency of a good life. Jobs, health moves, relationships, exits. When you believe you have options, you find more of them. When you cannot see them, even open doors look locked. This is not just a vibe. Classic experiments from the late 60s showed this with animals. When they learned that nothing they did could stop a shock, later they wouldn't even try to jump away, even when escape was a simple hop over a low barrier. Their ability was the same. Their expectation of control had vanished. In workplaces, people who believe their actions matter tend to report higher satisfaction and better performance with less stress. The links are small to moderate, but they add up over years. A steady tilt toward choice changes a career. So how do we get stuck? Uncontrollable harm teaches the body and brain a posture. The core lesson is, nothing I do matters. That conclusion, learned in one specific context, can generalize. The brain, seeking efficiency, turns this past experience into a rule for the future. You start carrying yesterday's rule into today's room, where the exits might actually be open. It becomes a default setting, a lens that filters out possibilities before you're even aware of them. Rumination makes it worse. Replaying the hurt feels like doing something. It is busy. It is intense. But it works like quicksand. More spinning, less movement. Research links this loop to longer and deeper low moods. Online, outrage and victim-coded language spread faster. On some platforms, each extra moral, emotional word boosts shares. That means the identity that shrinks your options can get the most attention. Short-term clicks, long-term stuck. Good trauma care does the opposite. It pairs validation with empowerment, voice, and choice. It says, what happened matters, and also, we will rebuild control where we can. Not either or, both. Let's ground this with two colleagues. Both get laid off in a messy restructure. Both feel angry and scared. Both were treated unfairly. One locks into the story. They ruined my career. They replay it each night. They scroll job sites late into the night without applying. They freeze. Weeks blur into a month. The other says, that was wrong and it hurts. They file for benefits that same day. They block a weekend to rebuild their resume. They message 3 former clients just to check in. No magic, just small, concrete levers. 6 weeks later, that second person has had 4 interviews and landed a contract gig. Same pain, different story about what was still possible. The fork in the road was not talent, it was posture. So how do you shift your posture? Step 1 is pure validation. Name the harm. Say what happened. Say why it was not okay. Say how it touched your sleep, your money, your trust. Plain words calm the nervous system. Then draw a line between the event and your identity. X happened to me is true. I am nothing but X is not the whole truth. You are more than your worst day. Keep that space open. And what if the harm is ongoing? What if you're dealing with a toxic work environment or a chronic illness? The principle is the same, but the scale is smaller. Acknowledge the outer wall, the parts you truly cannot control. Write them down. Then, look for the narrow band of agency you still have. Maybe you can't change your boss, but you can document interactions, update your resume for 15 minutes a day, and take your full lunch break away from your desk. Small does not mean useless. Small is where traction begins. Step 2 is self-distanced reflection. When you feel stuck, step outside your head by 1 inch. Talk to yourself using your own name, or ask, what would I advise a friend in my exact spot? It sounds odd. It works. That tiny language shift lowers the emotional heat. It frees up your planning brain. Use it to pick one concrete next move. It is not about minimizing the pain. It is about making room to steer. Quick nudge while we are here. If this way of thinking helps you breathe a bit easier, subscribe to Knowledge Worth Sharing. This channel is all about simple tools that widen your options. Step 3 is the agency checklist. Borrow from advocacy playbooks. Scan housing, money, safety, work, skills, and support. In each area, look for one lever you can pull. Shrink the unit of action until it fits in your day. Not find a new job, but send one email. Not get healthy, but walk for 1 hour. Put it on a calendar. Ask for help if needed. Design around the barriers you cannot move. Step 4 is time-boxed grieving, often through expressive writing. Give the pain a container. Set a 15 to 20-minute timer. Write the uncensored version, no filter. When the time ends, close the notebook. And do the next small step you picked. This kind of writing has helped many people make sense of upheaval. Why? Because it transforms chaotic feelings and fragmented memories into a coherent story with a beginning, middle, and end. That act of structuring the narrative itself restores a sense of control. In some studies, students who did it visited the health clinic less in the following months. It's not magic. It's a simple way to process the past so it no longer dominates the present. Grief is not the enemy. You are allowed to feel it fully. The goal is not to erase it. The goal is to keep it from swallowing the entire day. Does this actually work? After uncontrollable stress, many of us stop trying until we relearn that our actions can change outcomes. Agency is like a muscle. It fades with disuse. It can be rebuilt. People with a stronger sense of control tend to report higher job satisfaction and slightly better performance, with less burnout. Again, the effects are not huge, but they are steady, and they compound. Empowerment-focused support changes outcomes. In one program for survivors leaving shelters, hands-on help with housing, work, and safety planning led to better quality of life and less re-abuse years later compared to usual services. Validation plus levers beats validation alone. Short writing exercises about real disruption reduce later clinic visits. Using your name instead of I during stress recall lowers emotional spikes. These are small switches, but they are reliable enough to try. So let's pull back to the big picture. The evidence, from classic psychology to modern workplace studies, points in one direction. Acknowledging the truth of what happened is essential for healing. but it is not sufficient for growth. It must be paired with small, deliberate acts of choice. That combination, truth and traction, is the engine of resilience. One without the other leaves you either in denial or in despair. Together, they create a path forward. A few traps to avoid. This is not blame. Systems and people can cause real, ongoing harm. Some limits do not move. That is real, and safety comes first. If you are in danger or crisis, your priority is protection and support, not mindset work. Reach out to local services and people you trust. Stabilize, then plan. Notice the pull of social rewards. Likes can nudge us to keep telling the stuck version of the story. You do not need to shame yourself for that. Just notice it and choose a next step offline. And remember, not every tool fits everyone. Effects are usually small to moderate. Clinical conditions like major depression or post-traumatic stress need professional care. This is a frame for thinking, not medical advice. Here is the reframe to carry with you. You are not responsible for what happened to you, but you are 100% responsible for what happens next. This single distinction protects your dignity without giving up the steering wheel. It allows the truth of the harm to stand, to be the first chapter of the story, not the final line. When you feel lost in the fog of resentment or helplessness, just come back to that. Validate the past and then choose one tiny lever for the future. That is the move. Repeat it, and options grow by inches, then by feet, until one day you look around and realize you're in a much wider room. If this way of thinking widened your options, subscribe for more ideas that help you navigate reality with wisdom and skill. Thanks for your time and attention.